All right, we are live. Tapping birdie, not Zurich Classic week. Me and Steve are going to be going over the history of the major championships over the past 15 or so years and talking about the best and the worst. Steve, I know me and you are both golf major history junkies, so I thought this would be the perfect thing to do for the Zurich Classic week, which is easily the worst on the tour.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a reason why Capper and I are not doing Zurich Classic stuff. We said we're going to do LIV Mexico show and a mailbag, and then we'll actually have an NFL draft show on Thursday. That will be a live stream because the Giants and Patriots pick back to back. We're basically doing everything not Zurich at this point. But yeah,
Yeah.
but at Oak Hill, I remember when I think we're standing on the second tee box, and remember those commemorative cups that they
Yeah.
had, and you just tapped me. You're like, all right, let's just quiz. I'm going to quiz you about all the PGA winners. And we just went back, I think, all the way to 2000. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I am very, very good at knowing who won X major championship X year until about 2005. Like I could off the top of my head go back to about 2005 for all the majors. It's something I'm very fascinated with. Obviously, it's the four most important events of the year. And, who wins them is obviously a big deal. So that's something I'm always, interested in. And I know you are the same way. Off the top of your head, how far back can you typically go for major champions?
I mean, I'd probably go back to like the mid 90s. The problem is Tiger won so much that sometimes I confuse the years. But
Yeah.
like I know generally speaking, like David Toms won the PGA, I think in 2001, but that's around when Tiger was winning like what
Yeah.
8 or 9 majors in a span of like 3 years. So sometimes I get the years wrong, but I know exactly like who won. Really, since like 2008, when like Tiger stopped winning everything, I can pretty much nail every single year.
Yeah,
And every quarter.
2008, like Podrick won three in there. It gets kind of fuzzy. And then Tigers majors in like '06 and '07 all kind of blend together. Like those PGAs he's won are definitely like the least memorable of his major championship, like at Medina. And I'm forgetting the other major he won around that time. But that's usually what I do when I can't sleep. I just go and I just try and think like was ZJ and Emmelman, was it '08, '07? I always get those confused, but I know Immelman won in '08. ZJ was 2007. So we did have a golf tournament this week. We had the signature event at Harbortown. Justin Thomas breaks his winning drought and gets it done. You were on board. Congratulations. What was the case for JT this week, and how did you land on him?
Well, I landed on him, and it was I had a lot of peer pressure from my co-host who clearly hates Justin Thomas. He has an axe to
Yeah.
grind, and I didn't care. Basically, the case was, I think sometimes we overrate what happens at the Masters, and just we liked a lot of guys at the Masters, and just sometimes it just goes wrong for them. But with a guy like Justin Thomas, he tends to be pretty good on these shorter positional tracks. He's won at places like Waialae and Sawgrass and TPC South when he's done well at River Highlands. He had a couple of good finishes here. And I just saw him almost win at Innisbrook as well, kind of another similar type of track. So I figured I looked at the 22-1. I was going to ignore what happened at the Masters. He'd
Yeah.
been hitting his
And he
irons
was
pretty
your,
well all
I
year.
believe he was your pick at the Masters to win.
Yeah, he was. So I went right back to it. And I just thought this was a good spot for him. It seemed like I was actually surprised that people didn't make the same case I was making all week, but it worked out pretty well. Your boy, Andrew Novak, almost gave me a heart attack. I actually ended up going for a walk right as the playoffs started because, I'm with the kids. I'm on vacation. Thought maybe it was going to be good karma to maybe do something with them, and looked at my phone. He ends up burying the 30-footer, and there you go. So fourth outright of the year, pretty good year so far. But I was happy to be on Justin Thomas finally breaking that winless streak.
Yeah,
And
because
also, yeah,
he was easily the most due golfer on the PGA Tour. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when with him. And I think Valspar proved that to a lot of people is like, this guy's ready to win. JT is back. And I made the case for him at the Masters, mostly because I had a future. But, this was not the JT of 2022. Like, this was a much I mean 2023. He is a much better golfer now, easily a top 10 player in the world. He is back to his good form, and I think for a while people were kind of, he got a lot of shit for that 2023 season and making the Ryder Cup team, but he is not even close to that golfer. And he was going to win soon, and for him to do it so quickly after the Valspar defeat, I thought was very impressive.
Yep, and I was listening to on the car ride down to the Outer Banks. I had some of the coverage on, and they were talking about how he was actually working to fix his putting. And last offseason, he actually went to work with Xander and
Yeah,
got
that
some
was an
tips.
awesome story. He talked about it in the presser.
Yeah, and he got some tips from him. They compared notes, and they were talking about how he went from like 150th in service game putting to 40th this year, and that's really been the biggest key of
Yeah.
between good Justin Thomas finishes, but the putter cost him, and now he's been in the mix a couple times and finally won. So,
Yeah.
good for him. Got some momentum heading to Quail Hollow, place where he won the last PGA there. Obviously, you got Rory McIlroy coming off a big win at the Masters. It's right around the corner, but we're starting to see a lot bigger names starting to peak ahead of the PGA. It should be pretty interesting in a couple weeks.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think someone texted me like, is JT going to go on a run now? Like, I don't know about that. Like, he probably got his win. He probably got his best win of the year. I think people predicted him to have a really good season, and he really has. I think maybe he could, knock off another win. Major, I'm kind of out on that. I don't know if he could win another major championship, and I think you could just throw him out for Quail, just because he already won there last time. So that's an easy cross off for me. But Novak, the guy just loves the final group on Sunday. I mean, like he must be leading on the PGA Tour in final groups played on Sunday. This is his third now. He was really, really impressive. I was a bit nervous if he was going to win. I obviously would have been really happy for him. But to not be on him after Valero, it would have been a bit upsetting. But I was ultimately okay not being on Novak, but he really had a bad, Sunday performance at Valero and turned it around. And he was really, really impressive. And he's a really freaking good golfer. Not a bit. Is he on the radar for Beth Page?
Oh my God. I mean, this was kind of being bad around in the Discord last week about the state of the US team. I mean, look, it sounds shocking that Andrew Novak, who barely had a PGA Tour card up until about 2 years ago, and then now he's actually starting to play some good golf, would be in consideration for the Ryder Cup. But you look at the state of this US team, and I mean, we're talking about Maverick McNeely, Brian Harmon again, like a lot of these guys. Like it's funny how when we look back to that 2021 team that we thought was just going to be the super team, like dynasty decade, and now we're looking at the state of the team and we're like, the cupboard's very bare. So
Yeah.
at this point, I'm kind of just looking for anybody with form, anybody who's putting
Yeah.
together some solid, consistent golf that can maybe work well with some others. And yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of the state of the US team that we got to kind of throw Andrew Novak in there. But hey, listen, like he's been playing great golf, like you said.
Really good golf. I'm
Yep.
I'm I'm curious what you think. Where do you think he is in the FedEx Cup standings right now?
The FedEx Cup standings,
Yeah.
is he like 12th?
15th, pretty good
Okay.
guess. But
All right.
again, like he's playing some really, really good consistent golf. I don't think he'll be at Bethpage, but I think a win is coming for him soon. I tweeted again, you don't see my great tweets all the time, which is really sad. But I said the most due golfer on the PGA Tour beats the second most due golfer on the PGA Tour in a playoff today. Novak's just playing some great golf. Dear friend of mine. And he's just so authentic and just the most relatable golfer. Like he just seems like a chill dude that just happens to be really good at golf, and he's awesome, and I'm really happy for him. Um, let's get into the major rankings. So I had this idea to rank the best and worst of each major over the past 15 years. So the best Masters and the worst Masters. since 2010 we cut it off. There were some really terrible majors in that like 2007 to 2011 range, but we kind of cut it off. So was it more fun or easier to find the worst major or the best? What did you have an easier time with picking? Because I thought it was actually more fun to pick the worst majors.
Oh, it's way more fun to pick the worst majors and go down some of those leaderboards and just see some of the guys that were in the mix, just recall some really bad moments in the tournament, recall some really bad golf courses that they had played. And look, I mean, I love going to negative town sometimes. So it
Yeah.
definitely was a lot more fun trashing some of these major venues and some of the leaderboards and just how it got there. It was definitely easier to do the best ones.
Yeah.
Well, originally we were going to do like the top four just in general, and then we
Yeah.
did it by category. So, but like the Masters is really easy for me. The Open was really easy for me. PGA was really easy for me. US Open, I had a little tougher
Yeah,
time
the
coming up with the
U.S.
best one.
Open, that was the biggest surprise. There haven't been a lot of great U.S. Opens in the past 15 years. There's been a lot of like good average ones, but not a lot of very noteworthy U.S. Opens in the past 15 years. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. I mean, I think so. For me, how I did this list was I weighed a couple things. Who was in the mix, like the star power up at the top, the venue, how did it play, the course conditions, and then just like the caliber of play. Like, did somebody back into a wind? They kind of have like a flat Sunday, but lucked into it, things like that. And, I think there's like a couple examples of some US Opens. Like, I think Chambers Bay, that was a pretty thrilling finish and
Yeah.
a good leaderboard, but the course condition that week, like I personally think Chambers Bay deserves a second chance at a major because they've done some changes to it. But man, I mean, they really botched like the course conditions that week. The greens were a mess, so that got a demerit. There's been some other, like Torrey Pines also had a good leaderboard, but
It's Torrey
I
Pines.
despise Torrey Pines. It basically was Farmers Plus at that point. So it's hard. Like, and then there was some other venues where, great golf course leaderboard just didn't really shake out all that good though. So there was one in particular that we'll talk about that kind of matched all those things that I'm excited to talk about. But yeah, like US Open, it was a struggle to come up with it. As far as worst major goes, definitely there's a lot of stinker PGAs that I had a tough time.
Yeah. I'm excited for
for.
your PGA worst. That you see, I like the research and what you were texting me about it. That definitely was a pretty terrible major, and I kind of want to do. I don't want to ruin. I kind of want to do a deep dive, not a deep dive of the 2011 PGA Tour season. Truly, like the worst season of golf of all time. You look at the winners of these events, not even just the majors, the regular events. Who was number one in the world at that time? 2011 was a very, very dark period for golf, and I have a major from that. I know you have a major from that, so I'm excited to talk about 2011 because it was a very interesting time in golf.
Yeah, I mean, you had Luke Donald and Lee Westwood
Yeah,
as the
yeah,
world. I mean, listen, I love Lee Westwood. Lee Westwood has cost me a ton of money gambling in my career, but yeah, when those two guys, it was like it was the post Tiger, scandal, and then there was kind of like a vacuum
yeah,
essentially that
yeah.
multiple guys like Schirmer was filling the vacuum. Luke Donald, Lee Westwood, like guys were pretty good, but just in hindsight, they're just really good golfers. It's not like, very elite golfers. And yeah, 2011, 2012, even 2013 had some very interesting major champions for sure. But yeah, like there definitely some PGAs. It was hard to definitely come up with between two. I ended up breaking a tie with my PGA pick that I'm very excited to share and dump on that tournament for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's get into it. I think the biggest debate, so we'll go in order of how they currently play. It's been talked about a lot. I did the podcast idea before we got this, but I think there's two very clear answers for the best Masters over the past 15 years. And honestly, other than the Rory Masters and other than the 2019 Masters, in between were some really, great winners, but very non-dramatic Sundays, and we obviously got that in 2019 and 2015. So I personally think 2025 Masters tops the 2019 Masters. And I know you don't agree, but you still hold 2025 in a pretty high regard. My thing about, I guess the reasoning for 2025 as compared to 2019 is that Rory winning, like Tiger won his majors. Like he didn't have anything really to prove that much at his that time in his career, and it wasn't as big of a shock, you know, when it happened, considering he went off at under 20 to 1. He won the tour championship the year prior. Like Rory dealing with the heartbreak that he had. That makes it more sweeter for me, given how close he was in the majors, the prior 3 years. And also, after the 12th hole, it was kind of over that year. But what is your case for 2019 being the best Masters of the last 15 years?
Well, you said it wasn't that shocking that Tiger won. And yes, like he went off around 21, but really that was because of just the books were afraid of
Yeah.
all the money that were coming in. Like if you really were going to fairly price Tiger, the Masters, it probably would have been maybe like 35, 40 to 1.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I mean, I think how Sunday played out in the back nine of 2025, it was more dramatic. I will say that, especially because of how Rory kind of had some really great shots and some really poor shots, and it went to a playoff. And you also had Justin Rose in the mix as well, looking for a Masters as too. So there was a lot of high stakes and a lot of, um, career legacy defining like implications of it. But for me with Tiger, it comes down to this. In hindsight, yeah, he won the tour championship. Yeah, he was in the mix at Bellerive as well. But it was pretty much anything that we could get out of Tiger at that point was pretty much gravy. We all knew he was on borrowed time at that point. He had just come off of 2 consecutive back surgeries. He had the leg injuries, the scandal, and he was 45 years old, and it just seemed like, is he really going to win a Masters? Really get another major? Probably not. He definitely wasn't at his peak, but just things just kind of fell into place for him. Though that all that Sunday, you had just the absolute chaos that happened at number 12. I was watching a YouTube video of the 2019 Masters, and they're talking about how the winds were really like impacting all the players, and there was something going on top of the trees that guys weren't perceiving. That's why everybody was hitting in the water. So you had that crazy sequence as well. And then after Francesco finally went in the water, it kind of turned into a little bit of a sweepstakes. It wasn't just Tiger that was in control. You had Dustin Johnson. He's making a run down the back nine. Could he actually win the Masters? You had Brooks Koepka, who had a lot of really good looks for birdie on 17, 18. There was the famous video of him looking back to 16 as he's, watching Tiger tap in for birdie, and he's got a little grimace on his face, like, all right, I really got to dig down and get it. Xander was in consideration to win that Masters too. Even Patrick Cantlay. I know it's kind of like it's sometimes when you watch, especially really easy Masters, some guys look like they're in the mix, but they're not really. But even Cantlay kind of looked like he was going to be in the mix. So there was a lot of guys who, if Tiger started to misstep a little bit, were right there to grab it. So there's more guys in contention for me. And just, we just didn't think that it was going to ever happen for Tiger again. And to think of everything he had to do to come back, all the adversity to finally get one more Masters. And then in hindsight, he really just fell off a cliff again right after that. So he had a very short window to capitalize on some really good golf. And we saw him do it. He ended up having like a good December with the President's Cup and Zozo. But after that, he was done at that point. So that was a nice way to capture his last gasp at real relevancy in professional golf. And, with Rory in 2025, he's still one of the best players in the world. He still had plenty of chances to winning Masters. It wasn't like one of his last gasps to get it. So for me, that was why I still hold 2019 above 2025. Maybe I'm just revolting against being a prisoner of the moment. And 5 years from now, I might change my mind. But
and also I think something that negates 2019 a little bit you had the weather delay. They teed off super early, split tees in threesomes. Like, that's a knockdown. Tiger's total strokes gained was one of the worst major championship winners
Mm.
of the past 15 years. Like, it wasn't this like unbelievable performance. And again, I am kind of high on the recency bias of, like, I understand that Tiger winning, captured America, but I really think there was something different about Rory winning this year, where everyone seemed to be so locked into it, and the shots he hit down the stretch, and you really didn't know who was going to win. The final couple holes. That's what I kind of have most important for me. Like, the course matters and everything. I know you care more about that, but like, to me, back nine on a Sunday, I don't know who is going to win this. That's what makes it great major for me. And like, there might be some stinkers on the leaderboard or whatever, but I think the drama on the back nine and the fact that you didn't know who was going to win um, puts 2025 over 2019 for me, because it seemed kind of over after 12, and that might be revisionist history, but he kind of, limped to the win, bogey on 18 to win by one. But it's close. It's definitely close.
No, I agree with that. I think I remember that a little more uncertainty of the back nine at that point. But I mean, Tiger really just kind of played consistent, and he did all the classic things
Yeah.
like the throwback tire stuff. Like on 12, when he saw everybody put it in the water, he just hit it right in the middle of the green on 12, two putt, get out of there. He had a great shot into 15 as well
Yes.
to get a birdie. Ends up using the slope on 16.
Funnel pin.
Yep. Almost gets a hole in one at that point. So it was a lot of just, all right, Tiger is locked in. He knows he's got this, and just hitting solid, executing shots over and over. It looked like the old Tiger, and we didn't ever think we were going to see that again.
Yeah.
So, but I listen, 2025 Masters, it's a very close
Talk to me in
number
15
two.
years. A true talk to me in 15 years situation
Probably.
about these two, because it will be interesting. So, worst Masters of the past 15 years. I'll go first. You didn't tell me what you were doing. I hope we didn't do the same one. I think there's one kind of obvious choice, but I'm curious if you will think of something different. 2014 Masters was pretty bad. A very bleak Masters. Bubba Watson winning a second Masters doesn't really do, anything for anybody. I think a first time major champion, like, that adds a little bit of gravitas, but no one really cares that Bubba won a second Masters. Like, it didn't change his career. I mean, it did change his career, but it's not that great of an accomplishment. He winds up winning by 3 over Jordan, Spieth, and Jonas Blix. Like, Jonas Blix deep in contention at a major. Like, there's something wrong there, to a certain extent. Do you know who finished fourth that year at 50 years old?
Oh man, was it I know Thomas Bjorn was in the mix. Was it Thomas Bjorn?
No.
There was another old guy. Longer was in the mix that year. Couples did well. That like
It
a lot of
was
the older
Miguel
guys did well.
Jimenez.
Oh, that's
Miguel
right.
Jimenez
Jimenez.
finished fourth at 50 years old. So
Yeah.
the leaderboard was Bubba, Jordan Spieth, Jonas Blix, and Jimenez. Um, the top six finishers played the back nine in a combined one over. So there was very little drama on the back nine that Sunday. Jordan Spieth took the lead early on the front nine and then made some bogeys, and Bubba birdied 8 and 9 to have a 3-shot lead. It never really became that close. T8 that year was just a very awesome group of guys. Bjorn, Langer, Rory, Jimmy Walker, John Senden, and Kevin Stadler.
Oh.
Bubba parred his final holes to win by 3. The top 4 on the leaderboard all parred their final 4 holes. Like, there was just very little drama. It also led to, one of the worst Masters menus of all time, with the Caesar salad, the grilled chicken breast. And Bubba Watson, I'm not putting him as one of the worst. He's definitely not one of the worst 2-time major winners, but I don't know if it feels right for Bubba to have 2 Masters. Also, Bill Haas, first round leader. Like, just not to look back on for 2014. So last 15 years, I think 2014 is easily the worst Masters.
Yeah, so actually, when you mentioned 2014 Masters as the worst one, that was my pick. So I went to my number 2. I totally agree. From what I remember from that 2014 Masters, you're right. Jordan Spieth was like the new hot commodity, and he looked good early, but he completely fell off the map. And really, like after like hole 7 or 8, it was pretty much over at that point. It was just kind of just a processional at this point. The only thing I really remember from Bubba in 2014, he had an awesome shot on 13 over the trees. He had like 150 yards. Yeah, like that's a pretty good highlight. But otherwise, I mean, you're right. It was pretty non-eventful back 9. You had a pretty weird leaderboard with a lot of the older guys playing well. Kevin Stadler, like you mentioned, John Senden. By the way, Jonas Blix, top 5 at 2013 Oak Hill. So, respect that guy, by the way. He went through a very hot stretch of golf.
Wait, he did not after round 1, maybe. Jonas
Blix
did not.
No, he finished like top 5 at Oak Hill the year before.
Oh, well, I was like, there's no way 2023 Oak Hill.
No, he definitely washed out of that.
Okay, so I just saw that. He was kind of mixing in majors for a bit there. We might have to put some respect on his name. So what's your honorable mention for worst Masters?
So I went with, look, I mean, any golf that we got in COVID was just icing on the cake. Okay. Like, I mean, it was a horrible time between 2020 and 2021. But looking back at that 2020 Masters in November, I mean, it played soft. I remember when they had trouble putting the ryegrass down, and there was actually Bermuda coming up. So it really, like, agronomy wise, wasn't a true Masters. It was in the middle of football season too. So you had to compete with all of that as well. And, Dustin Johnson, listen, great champion. I'm glad he finally won a green jacket. It kind of continued the trend of, like, for the last couple of years of the best player just ends up winning the most obvious pick. But after round 3, this was the leaderboard heading into round 3. You had DJ at 16 under, and then like the chasers, like who could possibly make this interesting? Well, you had
Abe Ancer played in the final group, right?
Yeah, you had Abe Ancer at T2. You had Sungjae Im, who, we like, but it was 2020. And it's like, okay, like Sungjae Im, he's kind of green here. And you had Cam Smith before he was actually Cam Smith. So you had 3 guys who were really improving. They were 4 back. You had Dylan Fratelli at 11 under.
Forgot about
that. And then you had JT at 10 under, like 6 back. Like Rob was -9, but he wasn't going to win. Rory was 8 back. Like it just seemed like after Saturday, this was over.
It was a very unserious crew following him.
Yeah, no one was going to make a charge, and no one really did make a charge. DJ had to find around 68, and it just didn't feel like a true Masters. It was really easy scoring. It was super soft, and I know I'm happy.
Fans too, like no applause on 18.
Yep. Yeah. Like I'm happy they gave it to us. It was a blessing. I mean, it was really bleak. We needed something at that point, but yeah, it was definitely of the last 15 years, 14 is probably number 1. This was a close number 2 though. It was not a good Masters for me.
I agree. I think 2020 is a pretty obvious 2 there. I think it's tough with COVID. It's not like a real Masters. It's hard to, hold it on the same, accountability as the others. But let's move into the PGA. I want to start with the worst PGAs in the past 15 years because there have been some stinkers. My answer might surprise you.
Okay.
If you had to guess what I chose for the worst PGA, and I knew you were doing, I don't even think 2011's bad. I disagree with that. But what do you think I chose? It might surprise you.
Okay. Is it the 2013 Oak Hill?
No, it's not.
Okay. Which one is it then?
2019 at Bethpage.
Wow.
I mean, it was a bad major.
I mean, Sunday got interesting.
Yes, but
it got very interesting. It got very interesting on the back 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brooks Koepka wins by 2 shots over Dustin Johnson. I know you will know this. Do you remember who played in the final group with BK in the final round?
It was Harold Varner III, right?
And what did he shoot in the final round?
I think it had an 8 in front of it. And I remember, I think he hit a reverse shank on number 3. It was in the fescue, And instead of like he hit the hosel, instead of it just going like straight right, it was so extreme on the hosel that it went straight left, like further into the woods. Yeah, that was a complete ejection at that point.
He shot 81 to finish T36
Yep.
for the week. Truly one of the most greatest final round ejections of all time from HV3. Brooks, it was very clear he was going to win this. He led by 2 after round 1, but led by like 4 over third place. He led by 7 after round 2, and he led by 7 after round 3. I mean, this thing was over after 54 holes. The leaderboard going to the final round was Brooks, Jazz, Janikowski, or whatever. We were this close to Jazz playing in the final group of a fucking major. DJ, Luke List, and HV3. There was some drama late, 100%. Brooks birdied, bogeyed like 5 holes. DJ was making a charge, but DJ made some too late bogeys to just completely fall out of the mix. This was also after Tiger won, 2019. He missed the cut. Like, there wasn't a lot of star power on the leaderboard. We had Luke List up there. He finished T4. I might have just ruined it. Did you remember that JT didn't play in this?
I didn't remember the JT actually.
Yeah, JT just had a wrist injury. He did not play it. There was a Asian golfer that finished T7. Any guesses?
Oh man, the Asian golfer is T7.
South Korean, I believe.
It's not Sangmoon Bae, is it?
Yes.
Really?
Kang. Yes. Sung Kang finished T7.
Oh, I said Sangmoon Bae. No, not Sung. Sung Kang.
Okay.
Sung Kang.
Wow,
T7. Sung Kang. Jeez.
Kelly Craft T4 after round 2. That was
yeah.
But like, I know there was some drama late, but there was, leading by 7 going into the final round and into 36 holes. Like, there was no way Brooks was losing that major. It was the first one to May. It felt weird. I was there. I don't know. It was not a great, PGA. I think, 2013, 2011, you could definitely make the case for. But I just 2019 was not great.
I mean, look, I agree with you that Brooks sucked all the air out after 3 rounds. I mean, like that was one of the more super obvious bets, I think. Like he played really good, obviously coming in, played really good at Byron Nelson. And it's like, all right, like Brooks going to Bethpage and win. I think he was a very popular outright bet. I was on Brooks that week. So I will admit, though, like I was definitely not feeling all that great on the back 9 there. The crowd, the one thing I remember was the crowd starting to turn on Brooks, and he made a mess of 14, the par 3, and people were like openly cheering.
Yeah, because no one had anything to root for all week. No. Like there was no drama all week. So the second it was like kind of close, it was like, okay, like let's help Brooks completely collapse because I want to see some good golf.
Yep. Yeah. And, people were rooting for DJ at that point. And Brooks, I mean, he made 18 interesting as well. Like I think he up and down for par, but
yeah, he got up and down for par. He definitely could have won by 1.
Like, but he was what didn't he hit in like the fescue in the bunker as well?
Yeah, he had to chip out, and then he got up and down for par.
So like there was some late drama at that point where like, is Brooks going to blow this? And I think people pointed to that major, and then some of the other things that happened at some final rounds on Sunday the next couple of years. Like, all right, did that kind of scar Brooks at that point? I don't think that was definitely the worst major. It's definitely not the best major. I will agree with there. But I think there's 2 that I had in mind were definitely clearly worse than those 2. So I alluded to the 2011 PGA in our conversations, and up until this morning, it was the worst one for me. I mean, look, that leaderboard was an absolute abomination, and I understand it looks good now, but in retrospect, you had rookie Keegan Bradley at that point. You had Jason Duffner, who pre-2013 PGA, who's kind of like a journeyman golfer at that point. You had Brendan Steele in the final group as well. Robert Carlson, you had Anders Hansen. Like, it was bad. It was a bad leaderboard heading in. It was at a bad venue, Atlanta
Bad
Athletic
venue.
Club. Yup, Reese Jones redesigned there. It was hot as hell in Atlanta, and like the
Scott
crowd
for
was dead.
Plank.
Yup.
Scott for Plank up there.
Yeah, just really bleak leaderboard, but it did have a playoff, and that counts in my book as far as drama. So that moved that to the second worst
Okay.
PGA. The worst one is definitely 2016, though. That was
I wanted you to do 2016.
Okay. So if you guys remember, you had the 2016 Open a couple weeks before. And what they did was, because it was an Olympic year, instead of moving like the FedEx Cup or anything like that, and maybe moving the PGA later in the year, they moved the PGA to be 2 weeks after the Open. So you didn't even get to have like a little breath at that point. You went from one major that was incredible that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then he had the Canadian Open, and then he went to Balterra, another Reese Jones design that just looked it's just your typical Reese Jones. Parklands, narrow, pretty much every hole kind of looks the same. Not a very compelling venue. And it just, at that point, it was like, all right, like we just came off a major. We had to do this all over again. Coming into the weekend, you had Robert Streb and Jimmy Walker at 9 under. You had Jason Day, like one of the best.
Robert Streb played in the final group on Saturday.
Well, so here's the thing. So this was heading into Saturday. Robert Streb and Jimmy Walker were final group. You had a lightning delay in the third round that pushed everything to Sunday at that point. So you had a big weather delay. And what they did was, on Sunday, they decided to live clean in place, which is never good for a major. And after the third round completed, they didn't regroup. They just sent everyone else back out. So it was just a complete shit show at that point.
They did not regroup in the final round.
They didn't. So Streb and Walker got done in the morning, and then they just sent them right back out there again on Sunday.
What did Streb shoot in the third round?
So Streb shot, he shot 72. So I think he shot your 2 over even pars. Yeah, he was like T5 heading in. But but heading into Sunday, Jimmy Walker was up by 1 on Jason Day. And just nobody really made a charge on Sunday. Jason Day made a couple early bogeys. No one else really made a charge. Jimmy Walker ended up making 9 consecutive pars on the front 9 before making a couple birdies on the back. And I just remember watching this. I'm like, this is a complete snooze fest here. It got exciting at the end because Jason Day eagled 18. And then he looked back at Jimmy Walker. It was like some sort of intimidation tactic. I don't know. And then Jimmy Walker hit a horrible shot into 18, was in a really bad position, but he got up and down for par, ends up winning. I think Jimmy Walker's the worst major winner since 2010. So you have that stink right easily. That stink right there. Daniel Summerhays was 3rd in there. Robert Streb finished T7. You had William McGirt. He was T10 there. It was a bad idea to have it 2 weeks after.
2 weeks? I didn't know 2 weeks after, though. But
yeah, it was. Insane. Yeah, it just was. We couldn't catch our breath, especially after one of the best majors of all time, one of the best opens of all, at least this millennium. And it just felt like, all right, we're really going to go through this again. It was a bad winter, bad golf course. You had the weather delay, the lift clean in place, not regrouping in the final round. So to me, and I remember I was just bored watching it. There was really no action. It seemed closer than what it really was. I never really thought anyone was really going to make a serious charge on Jimmy Walker that week. And Jimmy Walker, like, he had a really good 2015. He was not very good heading in. This was actually kind of a surprise.
Like, what would be like a comp right now to Jimmy Walker winning the PGA? Like, what would be his like kind of PGA Tour comp? Like, what was he going off on, like, regular PGA Tour events odds wise? Like, did anyone think he was good? Could he win? Like, what was his vibe around this time?
Well, Jimmy Walker was pretty good from 2014, 2015. I mean, he top 10 a bunch of majors, I think, in 2014. I mean, that 2014 Masters, he top 10 there. He won I think like 3 or 4 tournaments between that stretch. But in 2016, he just wasn't very good. He kind of faded back, and then he won. It's kind of hard for me to put a comp to it. I think I'd have to think about that. But it definitely was a surprise given how he was playing before then, and then to just win a PGA at that point. So for me, that's the worst one. Even though the leaderboard's definitely better than 2011, which is a complete joke. That one at least had a thrilling finish, and you had Duffner choking at the end. This one, it just was a dud venue, dud winner.
Do you like Balterra as a major championship hosting course?
Well, so Gil Hanse, I think, redid it, and it's back in the PGA rotation. So I'm interested in seeing what it looks like. But from what I remember of the golf course, it wasn't all that interesting. It just was a Reese Jones. I mean, it's like a lot of his Reese Jones.
The open doctor, Reese Jones.
Basically, yes. So
no, the ending of 2019 is literally absurd. Keegan Bradley makes a triple bogey on the 15th hole, birdies the next two, and Duffner bogeys 15, 16, and 17, misses a bunch of short putts to go into a playoff, and then Duff misses a shorty in the playoff, and Keegan makes. Yeah, it is. Winning a major in your rookie season is something I don't think I'm not going to say we're never going to see again, but it is so uncommon. And I don't know if that's really going to happen. And if you kind of look at the past major winners last couple of years, they're all vets. Like, we have not had a young major winner in a really long time. Like, Colin and COVID is it since, and Fitz was a little bit older, but like, it's just been a lot of seasoned vets the past couple of years. You would agree, right?
No, for sure. And I think it's just how the PGA Tour kind of is now, where you have essentially two tours in one, where you got more of these veterans just more battle tested against the better players in the world. And there's kind of a ceiling with, like guys who are coming from the Corn Ferry Tour, they don't have access to, really test themselves, put pressure on themselves, and honestly accrue enough points really to get into these majors either, unless they get an invite. So yeah, I mean, I back then, like, you didn't really have, like, you had bigger events, but it wasn't like signature events. It basically was like, all right, you had some guys play, like it was kind of a little more evenly split as far as like star power across most tournaments, other than some of the select big ones. This, in today's PGA Tour now, it's just harder for somebody coming up from the Corn Ferry Tour, unless you are just a stud and have immediate success. It's hard to really break through like a Keegan did. So I definitely would agree with that.
So let's move on to the U.S. Open. Again, U.S. Opens, there have been some like decent ones, exciting two-man races, but nothing super special. What is your best U.S. Open of the past 15 years?
Well, I'm swallowing my pride because I came up on the wrong end of it. And after this tournament, after a bunch of beers that I had, I ended up sitting on the dock of my parents' cottage. My dad's watching, by the way, and he remembers this fondly. I muttered an F-bomb and I walked out to the edge of the dock and I just sat there for like 20 minutes.
Just contemplating life.
Just contemplating life. I had a rough outright season as well. Like, I had a lot of close calls, and this was just like another, like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I lost this one. But in hindsight, though, and you're right, like, there's been some, like, if I'm looking for good venue, like great course conditions, play difficult, good tests, and like drama down the back nine with like star power. The one that checks the most boxes is the 2024 U.S. Open last year at Pinehurst. I mean, it coming down the backstretch there, Bryson and Rory. Obviously you got the LIV tension, the PGA Tour tension, but you had such a popular player on LIV with Bryson DeChambeau, former U.S. Open winner. And they have Rory McIlroy, who had come close to a bunch of majors, came close to LACC. You had a Pinehurst that was firm and fast and difficult. And in my opinion, I think it's the best U.S. Open setup that they have when it's playing in those conditions. But with how difficult it is around the green, how fast these greens are, how like small misses can be magnified and put you in really horrible spots. I just love watching when guys hit approach shots at Pinehurst, like where the ball is going to go, because you're a little bit offline and just in horrible positions, kind of like we saw with Scotty Scheffler a couple times there. But you had those two guys coming down the stretch. It looked like Rory was going to win, but then he started missing some short putts, and he brought Bryson back into it. And look, I mean, to Bryson's credit too, one of the things we kind of dogged him on with his short game, but
his short game was unbelievable.
It really was. I mean, some of the holes at Pinehurst, you can use putter around the green, but I mean, that bunker shot he hit on 18 in a horrible
the up and down
spot.
on 8 also.
Yeah, there was a lot of memorable moments from Bryson, who definitely earned it. And just seeing those two guys going back and forth, battling out in the back nine in really difficult conditions. Like the scoring average was almost +3 for the entire tournament. Just a true test. And that checked the most boxes for me as far as star power, great venue, great course.
Yeah, I agree. I think that week everyone was really happy with Pinehurst. Like, I feel like a lot of people, like not even architecture people, came away being like, yo, this course is awesome. Like, this sets up for really, really good drama down the stretch, and how firm and fast the greens were, and how difficult some of the up and downs were, and kind of the unpredictability of kind of the runoffs and everything. Like, it really is a great course. And I think the USGA made a good decision to put it, on the rotation every 5 or so years, for the next 40 years, or something. So I am in, agreement with you. I think, runner up, for me, because I agree it is the best. Like, again, 2015 was great. There was a lot of drama down the stretch. The course, in a vacuum was great, but the conditions that week were not. But you just had some stinkers to start out the year, like Graham McDowell winning. He shot like 3 over in the final round to win. You had Rory winning by 8 at a soaked Congressional. Webb Simpson 2012. I don't really have. 2013 was good. I think 2013, in terms of the course and the winner and the drama down the stretch, was a great major. So I'm in agreement with you there. My worst U.S. Open, I think this one's pretty easy. Martin Kaymer 2014 at Pinehurst. I mean, this was an absolute snooze fest from start to finish. Again, it's not even someone winning their first major championship. He already won one. It didn't, it changed his career a little bit, but there's a difference between a second major and a first major, especially given how much he fell off since this win. I don't believe he's ever won a single event on any tour since this 2014 US Open. I believe that to be the case. I could be mistaken on that, but I literally don't think he's won on any tour since 2014. Kaymer that week led by 3 after round 1, 6 after round 2, and 5 after round 3. He won by 8 in the end. The closest it got on Sunday was 5 shots. Do you know who was his closest competitor at that point on Sunday?
Was it Eric Compton?
It was Eric Compton, yes. Eric, I mean, a true, like, he is forever. There's nothing else interesting about Eric Compton other than the fact that he was kind of in contention after 2014. I can't name another single thing about him. Compton was the only golfer in the final 8 groups to break par in the final round. It was coming off that Bubba 2014 Masters, which was not great. Just a not great. I know Rory won the next 2 majors in, somewhat dramatic fashion, but to me, the 2014 U.S. Open was a complete snooze fest. One of the greatest major performances. I think he gained like over 20 strokes to the field, which is crazy to me. But that is my worst U.S. Open of the last 15 years. I don't know what else is close to that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I just hold Pinehurst to such esteem that the course conditions that week and how it challenged the rest of the field, like it doesn't make it the worst for me. And I mean, Martin Kaymer just played great golf, but you're right. There was a lack of drama. Like his resurgence in 2014 actually was kind of a surprise because he fell off a little bit and then he won the Players and then he won this. In hindsight, that really actually, I will fact check you. He won a tournament after that. He won the Grand Slam of Golf in Bermuda. A 4-man field. He won that October 2014. So there you go. All right, that was
But
his last
correct.
win.
He hasn't won on the DP World Tour ever since.
No, he hasn't. I thought he might have won on LIV, but he hasn't. I think he only
No,
got close when he
no.
did.
I think he like a true deal with the devil situation.
Yeah.
For his 2014 season. So, what is your worst U.S. Open in the last 15 years?
Well, so here's the thing. Like, I agree with you. The 2014 U.S. Open probably second or third worst. I mean, that congressional one also was stinky, but it's also not congressional's fault. That just dumped a lot of rain. Like, it is what it is. But this is not going to be a popular pick, and I think I'm going to get some blowback by it. But this is more, I think, a statement of I just don't like U.S. Opens at Pebble Beach. I just don't at this point. And they got lucky in 2010 because it was really windy and really firm, and it played extremely difficult that week. So they got lucky there. But in 2019, the weather gods were definitely not favorable to them. You had the June gloom, and I like back then I was a younger golf content provider at that point, and I had just assumed, okay, well, it's gonna be like 2010, firm and fast, like it's gonna be exciting. And then I turned on the TV, and I'm like, man, this is just soft, like Pebble Beach at this point. It's well, it's kind of difficult, but it just played really slow and just boring golf, and it just didn't do it for me for that week. And I mean, like, to be honest, like, no offense to Gary Woodland, but it's one of the weaker major champions we've had. I know he's had a lot of adversity with the medical stuff the last couple of years, but this was before that.
Yeah.
At that point, you had Justin Rose also in the mix, who was, do you remember what club manufacturer he was hitting at that point?
Was he not with TaylorMade?
No, so he dabbled with Anma, that Japanese golf club company.
Did not know that.
Yeah, so he had a great 2018, made it to number one in the world, and then he decided to switch to Anma, and his ball striking just went to hell. But he just ended up putting his way to like a really good, like, in contention. But those two were basically clear the field. Yeah, Brooks Koepka at 7 under, Ches Reavie at 7 under, Louis at 7 under.
Ches Reavie.
Yeah, I mean, anytime Ches Reavie's in the mix, like, that's not.
So what did that foreshadow with Ches Reavie?
Well, he won Travelers the next week,
Yeah,
so that's
fine.
that's great. But Ches Reavie had a major championship venue. I understand Pebble Beach kind of suits his.
No, I if Ches Reavie's in contention at the U.S. Open, it's not a U.S. Open.
But what I remember from Sunday is Brooks made a charge the first couple holes, but then he just flatlined at that point. And Rose had a 74 to kind of fall out of it. And listen, Gary Woodland played great. He played steady golf, but no one really, other than Brooks early, made a serious charge.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Brooks like missed a pretty short putt for birdie on the back 9.
Yeah, and that was really about it for him. And like the only adversity Gary Woodland I felt had on Sunday was on 17 with the hourglass green. He hit it on the wrong side of the hourglass. He had to chip over the mountain. Like, that was a great shot, but it just was not a compelling Sunday for me. It's a really weak major winner. And just Pebble played bad that week. Like, I'm sorry.
Was there no wind at all? Like,
no, there was
like
a little
gusts up to like 15. Like,
I barely. It played really soft. And what they were saying, like, okay, the whole. And I think this is the USGA trying to play damage control at this point. They're like, okay, we're gonna speed it up gradually, day by day, to make it a little tougher. And I honestly didn't really notice much of a difference. Like, so the final round played at 71.16. That was only 0.1 over par. So just not very challenging conditions. It just didn't seem like anybody really made a run at it. So my hate for the 2019 US Open has more to do with the golf course and the setup, not necessarily the winner at that point, but the overall body of work. I just was not a fan, and maybe I was just led to believe that I was going to play a lot tougher than it did. It just didn't. So
you were mad. You were mad. You had a bad outright card that week.
I did. I had a bad outright card. I was mad at the course setup conditions. I'm not as seasoned and a veteran like I am now to kind of recognizing this stuff. So, but yeah, I thought it was kind of a snooze fest, that whole U.S. Open, and I honestly am good on seeing Pebble Beach as a major venue. I already see it every single year in February. I don't need to see it again in June, where all they do is just kind of narrow some fairways, grow up the rough.
Yeah, and
that's
if you don't have weather, there's nothing they could do to Pebble Beach to make it not -15 winner.
No, especially with modern equipment. These guys just,
and they're already playing. They're already tipping it out for Pebble.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, with how far guys can hit with just 3 woods and irons and everything like that, like, you don't need. It's not like the days where you have to like hit driver to like to get it out there. These guys can hit out there so far that like you just it's just such a short course now, and there's not a whole lot to do unless they just trick it out. So, and if there's no weather, there's nothing to it. So, yeah, that one is the worst for me.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I was a bit surprised when you said it, but no real beef with the pick there. So let's get into the final major of the year, the Open Championship. I completely disagree with your best, and I think the reason it's your best is because you had Henrik Stenson outright that week, and like you, and I guess I'm biased of that too with my pick, but I feel like. And even after I said after Rory won, I said best major of this century or whatever, and someone's like Troon 20. I'm like, what? No, I don't even know if it's top three for me. But you can make the case for why Troon in 2016 was the best major championship of the past 15 years.
All right. Well, first I want to say I think Royal Troon. I'm higher on the golf course, I think, than most people. I think it's a very underrated Open Championship on the road up. It always seems like it delivers a tough test. We saw it last year too.
Yeah.
I described it on the previous show of how it's just a play in 3 acts. You have a real gentle opener where you can go score. Like, and if you don't score the first like 5-6 holes, it's gonna be tough sledding. The second act, like once you start working your way through the gorse bushes, you bring out of bounds into play, penalty strokes, like massive car crashes. It just gets really funky and weird in the middle of the round. And then the last 6 holes, you're playing back into the wind, and it's tough, but it's fair. It's a good closing stretch. I feel like I think for just setting up for a round of golf and deciding who is the best player of that tournament and that day, it's a great setup. So I'm high on Troon. So obviously that elevates it up my list. Obviously, I'm a big Henrik Stenson fan. Always love that guy.
Had him 40-1 that
Yep,
week.
had him that week. I was the only one rooting for Henrik Stenson. Everybody was rooting for Phil. But legitimately, though, that was a very entertaining week of golf. There was a lot of just like silliness about that tournament. You had the British media going after Billy Horschel for turning his hat backwards. That's always entertaining when the British media gets to stick up their ass for something.
Do you
American
remember anything about Phil's hat that week?
Yeah, so he wore the binder clip after round 1 because it was windy, and because it's so superstitious, he decided to wear it the rest of the tournament. So, but you had Phil Mickelson in the mix playing awesome golf, and you had Henrik Stenson, who hadn't won a major yet, but was really close in a couple majors, won a Players Championship. And why I love the 26 Open more than any of the other ones was, yes, like they were head and shoulders above the field, but you had 2 guys going back and forth, essentially playing match play for 36 holes. Neither guy could really pull away from each other. They were only within a stroke of each other for almost the entire way until Stenson pulled away at the end. Henrik Stenson gained 29 strokes on the field. Phil Mickelson, second, gained 26 strokes on the field. Third place that week, 14 strokes back, was JB Holmes at that point. So the golf course played tough for everybody else. It played to a +2 scoring average, but just seeing 2 guys head and shoulders above the rest of the field playing excellent high caliber golf on a golf course I really liked, that I thought was a great test for everybody. The weather conditions also weren't great that week as well. You had a big wave split, so you had those elements in it too. And just, some of these other opens too, some of these turned into blowouts. Some of them were kind of snoozers on Sunday. Like, obviously, I think with 2022, you definitely can point to that being one of the better opens. But just 2016, I'm biased. I will say it holds a very special place in my heart, both gambling purposes, rooting interests, and I just really like Troon. I love seeing it. I love how
that Saturday this year at Troon was some of the best golf viewing of the year. How difficult it was playing, and just the weather in Scotland in general is just going to be tougher. So I do agree, and I like Troon as a major venue. I don't know when we'll see it next, but I agree. I think it probably is top 3 over the past 15 years, to be completely honest. My personal favorite, and I am biased, would be Cam Smith in 2022. This was, the absolute height of LIV versus the PGA Tour. Rory McIlroy was playing unbelievable golf that year. We hadn't seen the old course in a really long time. It was delayed due to COVID. The last old course winner was Zach Johnson. And I know the scoring was a bit out of control, but the birdies and what these guys were doing to the course was fun to a certain extent. You have Cam Young, first round leader, Rory, in a when he went off, it's a favorite at like 8-1. He shot a really good round. I think it was like -6. Cam Smith was right there, and then that round from Cam Smith on Friday, he shot a 764, was absolutely unbelievable, ridiculous. You had a really good two final groups going into the Sunday. You had Rory and Hovland, and then you had Cam Smith and Cam Smith and Cam Young there. And yeah, it was a great final finishing leaderboard. There were really you know, no one really there that kind of was out of place, in my opinion. The final leaderboard. Um, Cam Smith, Cam Young, Rory, Tommy Fleetwood, Victor Hovland, Brian Harmon, good foreshadowing, DJ, Bryson, Spieth, Cantlay. Like, that's just an absolutely elite top 10. And truly, that stretch from Cam Smith, I don't know if you were on him that week, or I don't know if you had Rory that week or whatever, but that stretch that Cam Smith went on from like 9 to 13, where he birdied all those holes, he made every single putt, the up and down of the old course, birdie on 18, Rory hitting all 18 grains, shooting -2 and not even finishing second. It was just a really great major. The old course always seems to deliver, except for Louis in 2010. So I put it a bit ahead of 2016, but I totally understand the point.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really dispute any of that. I mean, really, the only reason why 2016 is above 2022 is because I'm a big Henrik Stanton fanboy. Um, so yeah, like everything you said about 2022 with the drama on the back nine, Cam Smith making a charge, that up and down he had on the road hole, putting around the bunker. Like it is forever burned in my head because I thought like this is insane. He's going to putt it into this bunker and this term is going to be over. And he did it absolutely perfect at that point. And it just, yeah. And also remember as well, in that tournament, you had, which I think was, based on like he didn't actually retire, but we thought he was going to retire. You had Tiger walking down 18 on Friday to the crowd, and he cried and everything. Like that was a great moment. To me, I wish he retired right after that. That would have been great, but he didn't. But you had that.
Sure Rory was coming up one at the time.
Yeah. So Rory was about to tee off, and he gave a little hat tip to Tiger, and Tiger was coming down 18. It was a really good moment there. So,
and also Rory, like telling the story of him like walking out on his hotel and looking at the board and being like seeing his name up there and wanting it so bad. Like, he knew how special it was, and and I think right after that was when the first time we knew that Cam was going to live. It wasn't known then, but he was asked about it and he got like really upset, and I was like, I just remember being heartbroken that he was going to live after. And obviously it was the peak of his career and he'll never do anything like that again. But I think he is a deserved major champion. And I guess looking back on it, Rory winning the Masters, like, it's okay. It's all good. But what is your worst major of the last 15 years? I cannot believe you chose this one.
Well, here's the thing. I am the guest on your show, even though I'm technically the host on this channel, controlling everything because you had some audio issues. I can't go after 2023. You had Brian Harmon.
No,
it was a terrible major, but there is also another major that is pretty much played exactly like this in 2010 that I think I want to actually spotlight because it was so old that I want to remind people just how awful the 2010 Open Championship was. It started out great. You had a young Rory McIlroy shooting 9 under at that point, but then Friday turned into an absolute debacle because you had one of the biggest wave splits in history because you had guys in the morning going out in pretty benign conditions, and Louis got out to a pretty big lead. And then the wind kicked up in the afternoon, and they actually had to stop play for 65 minutes because balls would stop moving. Anytime you have a halt in play, that's never a good thing for an Open Championship. So you had, and the leaderboard was pretty odd heading into that final day. You had like Mark Calcavecchia in
Paul
the
Casey.
mix, Paul Casey, who was, good player at that point. But Louis, who back then, like in hindsight, Louis, like it doesn't seem unusual because of all the times he was in the mix at majors and almost won a Masters and US Opens. And he's got the Grand Slam of second place finishes and all those. But back then he was a complete unknown. Yeah. At that point, he won once on I think he won like the Spanish Open or something earlier that
unknown.
year.
Like genuinely was a complete unknown going into this tournament.
Yeah, so he led by 4 heading into the final round, and it got, I think, within 3 on the front 9, but then Paul Casey made an ugly triple on 12, and then Louis led by 8 after like 11, and it was just completely over at that point. So hindsight, he was a good like major champion, but back then we didn't know it. It was relative. It was a blowout. You had a lot of guys just get eliminated because of the wave split with the wind. It's just, that was a big snoozer. And I think 2023 played out the exact same way as that. That also was a snoozer after Friday, but you also had Brian Harman. I can't do that for you. To you. So that's,
it was a bad major. It was
the second worst Open.
Yeah, that was bad. And I remember tweeting, and I was like, I don't know why everyone said that was a terrible, like a boring major. I felt like I was on, crack the entire time because I was just freaking out the entire day. But yeah, and it was like he put it into the gorse on the par 5, and it got close for a second, and then he birdied the next 2 holes, and it was completely over. My worst Open Championship is the 2011 Open Championship. We had 2 really bad back-to-back Open Championships.
You're really doing this?
So what is your beef?
Because Darren Clarke winning was emotional. He just lost his wife, and he was, like a really good player in the mid 2000s. And
I want to highlight how bad the PGA Tour was in 2011. So
okay, all right.
World number 1 was Luke fucking Donald. Luke Donald, great player. Luke Donald is not a number 1 player in the world at all. Lee Westwood, number 2. Again, I don't know how the points worked out with the DP World Tour and stuff, but these guys should not be number 1 and number 2 in the world. This is the winners. Jonathan Bird at Sony. Jonathan Bird at GOC. I literally don't even know who Jonathan Bird is. He won a couple of them. Okay. Mark Wilson at Sony. Johnny Vegas, Bob Hope. Bubba Watson, Farmers. Mark Wilson, Waste. DA Points won Pebble that year. Aaron Badley won at Riv. Luke Donald wins the match play. Johnson Wagner wins at Myco, but Rory Sabatini wins at Honda. Nick Watney wins at the Blue Monster. Gary Woodland wins the Valspar. Martin Laird wins API. Like the worst winners ever. Phil Mickelson does win the Houston Open. That's a pretty solid win. But the major winners that year were awful. Yeah, Charles Schwartzel win the Masters. Rory win the Open, but it was a terrible Open. Darren Clarke win the Open Championship, and then Keegan Bradley win the PGA Championship. Do you know who won the Players in 2011?
Oh man, was it Henrik?
No, very unforgettable. Like one of the worst players winners of all time.
Who was it?
KJ Choi.
Oh, that's not one of the worst winners of all time. KJ Choi's a stud.
Sure. But the winners, the golf in this time was just so unbelievably bad.
Yeah.
Like the winners on the PGA Tour were just absolutely awful. But 2011 Open Championship, Royal St. George is easily the worst course on the Open rotation. Like not even a question, the worst course on the rotation. Darren Clarke wins by 3. Simon Dyson was leading on Friday with Miguel Angel Jimenez. I literally have never heard the name Simon Dyson. Does that name ring a bell to you?
I do, because actually how I got into golf gambling was a buddy of mine used to just pick countries and we'd have all those golfers. And then we had a weird point system. This is back in like 2010 or so. So I remember I would always pick England because they had the best golfers. You had Lee Westwood, Luke Donald, but Simon Dyson always was the albatross there who would cost me like 10 points because he always missed the cut. So yes, I know exactly who Simon Dyson is.
Very funny. But DJ made a double on 14 to just
Yeah.
completely eject and
Wait,
fall out of the
he hit a
event.
shank on that.
Yeah.
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 It's awful.
He was up 4 with 4 to play. Oldest debut major winner. He was 43 at the time. Only has 3 PGA Tour wins, and they were like way early in the 2000s. Like the win definitely kind of came out of nowhere.
Mhm.
He only had 6 top 10s in majors in his entire career. I know it was an emotional victory, but he bogeyed the final 3 holes to win comfortably. No real drama on the back 9. Bad course, bad major winner. That is the one that I'm always like 2011 Open. Like who won? Like who won that? Like it was just a very nothing burger major for me. I know it was. I know he capped in the Ryder Cup and everything, but Darren Clark winning the Open really did nothing for me back in
Curry, you're yawning.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's
I
how bad
mean,
it was.
what do you remember about that Open?
No, I remember exactly what you said. I remember Darren Clark basically coming out of nowhere, but I had remembered Darren Clark being one of the better European golfers in the mid 2000s. Fell off, but I always kind of liked that, that underdog story, him winning. I remember DJ. This was really early in his career, and this also was on the heels with DJ. We were starting to get, is DJ just a choker? So you had Pebble Beach in 2010, you had the PGA in 2010, and then you had 2011, which I mean, it was closer than it appears in that tournament. DJ was really making a charge, and he hit that shank out of bounds on the back 9 there, and that was it at that point. But that I remember that narrative started like, this guy is super talented. Why isn't he winning majors at this point? That's where it really got started. It's like, okay, another example of DJ choking. So for me, like, I agree with you. Royal St. George stinks. I'm good if I never see that tournament on the Open Championship. I thought the 2021 Open also stunk too. That Colin won.
Just a very like unmemorable course. Like there's not a lot that like stands out or like just not a great course, to be completely honest.
No, it's definitely, I actually went through, in case we did superlatives, I ranked the Open Championship venues, and Royal St. George is definitely solidly last on that list for sure.
Are we going to go back to Turnberry?
I'm going to be honest. It should. It's a good venue. The problem is,
the best course in the world.
So the problem is, it's not. I mean, I know people like saying it's because of who owns it, but the real problem with Turnberry is it's literally in the middle of nowhere. There is absolutely no way to get enough fans and infrastructure and media and everything that needs to go into hosting an Open in 2025 to Turnberry at this point. So, but I wouldn't mind if they went back to it because it's a good golf course. It was a good venue. But we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I just think there's too many. There's too many on the rotation now that something would have to get bumped. I mean, like Murfield isn't even on the rotation anymore, and that should.
Why?
Because they had they didn't let women play in the club for a while, so they took it off the rotation. That's since been changed, but who are you going to drop? I mean, maybe Royal St. George's. You could drop that.
I want to see Muirfield 100%.
Like, that 2013 Open was actually very good. That's another underrated one, but they haven't been on since. I mean, they won't get rid of Royal St. George's because they want to have Lower England have an Open. They already got rid of Royal Lytham as well. Like, that's not going to be on the rotation. Who else are going to drop? Royal Liverpool, Birkdale, Portrush. They got, I think Prestwick is going to have an Open coming up in a couple of years too. So there's not, like, even Carnoustie's not even on the rotation right now, and that should have more than they have. So it's hard to get on there, and unfortunately, with some of the logistical stuff with Turnberry, it's not going to probably be on there for the foreseeable future.
All right, one more question before we go. I want to ask you, and I know I did my rankings, who is the best and worst one-time major winner of the 21st century?
The best one-time major winner?
Yes, and the worst.
God. Well, the worst is Jimmy Walker. That's the worst one. Which Charles Schwartzel definitely hot on his trail for worst one-time major winner. You're shocked by that. Why are you shocked by that?
What about Sean McKeel?
Oh, we're going back that far?
Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah, that
am.
clearly that. Well, there's a lot of really bad.
There
We had
are so
yeah,
many bad, but like
Todd
who?
Hamilton, Rich Beam. You had a lot of stinkers back then. I agree with that. Yeah, I thought we were still going for 2010, but
No,
yes,
no.
yeah.
But who is the greatest one-time major win of all time? Rose, Sergio, Furyk,
I
Day.
mean, Davis Love the third is up there. Duval was really good for a while and then fell off, but Duval like that might be I'd have to think about that. It's probably one of those five: Sergio, Duval, Furyk.
I think it might be Rose.
Ro- eh, maybe. I'd have to think about that. That's an interesting question.
Okay, get back to me. We'll
I
do
will.
another
I will.
pod. We'll do
Yeah,
another
maybe
pod.
the next one where
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get an
Yeah.
outright winner. Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoy your week off. I hope you enjoy your vacation. I'm glad you were able to join on the pod. Congrats on JT again. Is there really a live event this week?
There is. They're playing Chapultepec.
I'm gonna
You
have to
love.
bet on
I
it.
love I love Chapultepec. That was
Did
listen.
they
It's a
play it last year?
no. They used to play
Wow.
Mayakoba for the Mexico. Now they're in
Wow.
Chapultepec. This is where they had the WGC for a couple of years. Listen,
Yeah.
bad golf course, but it's pretty exciting golf course. They've had some good tournaments there.
So you're betting on it?
Of course I am. We at least have seen PGA Tour players there. There's a lot of LIV players that did really good there. Like every single player that's won Chapultepec is on LIV now. So
Okay.
yeah. Reed's won there. Bryson.
Phil?
I actually had a Bryson ticket the year that Reed won. That was a bad beat. Phil, DJ, Rom's been pretty good there too. Hatton's been pretty good there. Like that, it's gonna be
I'll bet it. I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'll listen to everyone check out the Hold the Green live preview. It's gonna be great content. I might have to tell a couple bets. We'll see everyone next week for the CJ Cup presented by Byron Nelson. Just one of the best weeks of the year. Cannot wait for it. Hope everyone has a great night. Got a lot of great golf coming up, so be ready.